On air, I'm good at it, but off air, I'm not. Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, coming at you live at 7:06 p.m. Central. It's the season of the witch. It's Halloween. That season, we're moving into it. We got Wham here with us tonight, and Arthur John Russell.
What is it? This. I'm sorry.
John's newest book, A Knock in the Attic, True Ghost Stories and Other Spine-Chilling Paranormal Adventures. And I'm usually a nut for horror stuff around Halloween. I'm usually a nut for it all the time, but I like horror fiction, of course. The real stuff, get away, I don't really like it. But what are some things I've been watching for Halloween? The Chucky series, that's been kind of fun on Sci-Fi. It's a whole series with a little Chucky in it. And then What We Do in the Shadows, I love that. That's a great vampire. It's kind of like a modern Addams Family or Monsters. That's on Hulu. It's really funny. I'm about to watch Halloween Kills, the sequel to Halloween that came out. There's so many of them, but the newest one, they're actually killing it at the box office and beat James Bond, so it actually is doing pretty good. So, wow. But I'm going to watch that at some point. Jamie Lee Curtis is back in that one. Right. And I forget what else, but I try to, there's some Elvira stuff I'd like to watch because I know she has something on Shudder and something on Netflix, so hopefully I can get into some of that weirdness. And some movies and things like that. But, well, John, it's great to have you here. And I guess
being here.
Florida, too. Florida live.
Florida.
Double Florida. Well,
I appreciate you having me. It's nice to be here with you guys. Looking forward to it.
And I guess what got you started in the paranormal? What was the catharsis, the catalyst?
Well, the catharsis was when I was 5 years old, and I was sound asleep in my bed at night, and my parents had a nightlight in the hallway so I could see if I need to get up and go to the bathroom or whatever. And so it's the middle of the night. I'm 5 years old. I'm lying in my bed sound asleep, and all of a sudden, I wake up suddenly wide awake, completely wide awake. And I thought that was very strange and very odd. So I kind of raised up on my elbows in bed to kind of look around my room and see if there was anything, maybe something had fallen or made a noise, or if there was a noise outside that had woken me, but there wasn't any noise or anything. And I looked out my bedroom door, which was open, looked down into the hallway, and from around the corner of around the door frame, peering around the door frame, was this elderly black gentleman staring down the hallway at me. And I screamed bloody murder because obviously my family was white. We didn't have anyone black living with us. It's the middle of the night, and I presumed someone had broken in, that we had an intruder. Yeah. And so as a 5-year-old, I'm terrified, right? And
yes,
after I screamed, he walked around the doorway into the hall and started walking toward me, toward my bedroom. And his eyes never left mine. He looked at me the whole time. And he was every single bit as solid as you or I. He wasn't translucent, wasn't transparent. He was totally, completely solid. I can tell you what he looked like, the clothes he had on, the whole 9 yards worth. And I screamed bloody murder again. Then my parents started to come running. And when they started to come running, then he began to get translucent, transparent, and then disappeared. And even though I saw him disappear, I told my parents, I said, there's somebody in the house. There's someone in the house. And I was so frightened and so convincing that my father actually went around the house looking in all the closets, looked under the beds, checked all the doors and windows. Of course, everything's locked up tight. Nobody was there in the flesh. And they just tried to convince me that I had, watched something on TV that scared me, and I had a nightmare or a bad dream from that. And I knew better. I knew I'd seen my first ghost. And it took me a long time to get back to sleep because I was like, is he going to come back? Is he going to talk to me this time? Is he going to ask me to do something scary or weird? Why did he come in the first place? And so as the weeks began to go on, and I spent a lot of time looking over my shoulder and having a hard time getting to sleep. And as the weeks went on, it dawned on me that this gentleman came to open up the portal to the other side for the many paranormal manifestations I've experienced. And the reason for that was to connect me with the other side, connect me with all these beings, and let me begin to start learning life lessons and how that works, and then be able to convey that to other people and help them. So I began to understand that. And then shortly after that, when I was close to 6, then there was some people that came to visit my parents one day. They had this car pulled in the driveway. I was out in the backyard playing with some toy, and I didn't recognize them. I didn't know these people, so I ran the house to get mom and dad. And I said, "There's somebody out here that I don't know who these people are." So they said, "Okay, we'll come look." So they came out and said, "Oh, these are friends of ours." And I said, "Okay, whatever." So they're standing out there in the driveway and they're talking. They get up on the sidewalk, start walking toward the house, and they're stopping and talking while they're outside. And I walked up to them, and I just had this absolutely, totally clear vision. And I said, "You people have just been on vacation." And I said, "You took that car that's in the driveway and you drove that car." And I said, "You had 2 kids with you. They're not with you today, but you took 2 kids with you on vacation. And this is the hotel you stayed at. It had this many stories. It was painted this color. There were these trees that looked like this out front. And the pool area was painted this certain color and looked like this in the back." And the husband was kind of like, looking at my parents like, "What's going on?" And the wife, his wife, I will never forget the expression on her face. She was shocked and terrified. She was like, her eyes were bugging out. Her jaw was agape. And she looked at my parents and she goes, "How the hell could he possibly have known that?" And my parents looked at each other kind of confused. And she said, "How the hell could he possibly have known that?" And my mother made some statement like, "Well, kids and their imaginations, they make stuff up, come up with stuff." And she looked at my parents and said, "No, the kid's imagination doesn't cut it. He's not making up anything. This is what we came to tell you. We've just been on vacation. We were going to come tell you about the vacation." And we drove our car. We took our 2 kids. We stayed at this hotel that looked exactly like John described. How the hell is this possible? How the hell could he possibly do that? And she's looking at me like I got cobras coming out of my nose. I mean, she's just totally freaked out. And so my parents were like, "John, go play." And I was like, "Okay, nice to meet you folks." And off I went. And that's when I discovered that my psychic gift had also awakened, and that I could, see into people's lives, tell where they had been, tell what their thought processes were, their emotions. And then I began to discover that I could accurately predict the futures for them as well, have insights in that regard as well. So that's when all of that began to develop, and it was just a natural course of living for me from then on, to continue to explore this, experience this. The paranormal manifestations continued to come fast and furious, and each one brought a new learning experience, some more depth or meaning to my life. And then my psychic gift developed very rapidly. And then when I became about age 12, I became aware just through observation that there was a lot of chicanery in the spiritual realm, in the church, and among psychics, and in the paranormal. There was a lot of con artists, a lot of phonies, a lot of frauds. And so my pressing thing began to be, let's find the truth here. What's real, what isn't, what works, what doesn't. And that's when I embarked on this lifelong quest to study and explore and research the paranormal, the psychic realm. And then I began doing readings for my friends and family when I was in my teens. And by the time I reached 18, I'd turned professional. I started doing it professionally. And I've read for a worldwide clientele for this will be 50 years now that I've been reading professionally.
Cool. And I know you got into biking, and that tied into your last book. What can you tell us about some history of the bikerness stuff?
Yeah, I started riding when I was about 15, and immediately fell in love with it. Anything with 2 wheels and an engine, that was just the greatest thing I'd ever experienced. And continue to be a biker my entire life. On my current bike, I have almost 114,000 miles on that bike alone. So serious rider, and it's always been an important part of my lifestyle. And I never had quite the extent of paranormal experiences related to my motorcycling as I did of recent times. And that really kind of seemed to come about. I had shot a TV pilot for the History Channel, which unfortunately didn't air. And my producer and I became friends and continued to work on projects together. And one of the things he suggested was to write a few snippets of short experiences in a blog that we could use as additional marketing material when we approach TV shows and so on and so forth. And I began to have about that time, over a period of a year or two, these really phenomenal, over-the-top, intense paranormal experiences that related just to my motorcycle riding. And I would experience these things when I was out on the bike, and I would be led places. I would have incredible experiences there. I would have incredible experiences while I was on the bike. And I mentioned a few of those on the blog, but then they kept happening, and it got to be so prolific and so bizarre, so incredible, even by my standard, that I said, okay, I've got to take these and develop them, tell the full story of what happened, put all the details in, and collect these and get these stories out there, because they taught me a lot. And I think that by sharing them, it gives other people some new ideas, some meaning, some teaching, whatever, about some of these things, about what we can learn about interaction with the other side. And so it was kind of like my psychic legacy I wanted to leave. I was like, I've got to get these stories out there. So that was the real impetus for the first book.
And that was Riding with Ghosts, Angels, and Spirits of the Dead.
Right. Yeah, that came out in September last year.
And just to give you a little history, me and Wham have had experiences, paranormal experiences, and mine kind of seemed to be when I was 17, I went through testicular cancer and had to go through chemo and all that stuff. And science and God healed me, so to speak. And then a few years later, or a year or so, I lose count of the years, my dad passed away, and I started to have a lot of strange experiences from seeing beings of light leave my house. And that was here in Silver Lake in Mariana when I had that happen. And that wasn't that long ago. That was like 5 or 6 years. But when all that happened with the cancer and my dad and stuff, I had seen some native spirits. I also had some UFO type experiences where I seen weird stuff in the sky. I don't know if I was taken. If so, I don't remember a dang thing. But I had weird experiences where it seemed like there were things in the sky over my house with witnesses. And that's happened pretty much everywhere I've moved to. But one of the big experiences of mine that, that's hard to forget is the beings of light. And I know you've told some stories about guardian angels and things like that. Have you seen things with like beings of light, or what would you consider those, in angels? I'd like to hear more about that. And I know there's some health issues in guardian angels in a situation.
Right. I've seen all kinds of manifestations, all kinds of apparitions, and my guardian angel experiences. I believe we all have guardian angels, and we have to learn to listen to our guardian angels, to their advice, to their warnings, to heed what they're telling us, and then obey that. And that's what keeps us out of trouble. But one guardian angel experience I had. I was out in Pontoon Island State Park here in Florida, and you have to take a ferry across to get there, and then there's a 2-mile hike to the Shell Mound, and the Native Americans that lived there, the snails were their primary food, and there's this big shell mound where all the shells were piled up there, and it's a 2-mile hike, and you get there, and then there's a bench, and you sit out there, and you can rest and sit there for a little bit. So I have always had health problems ever since I was a kid, and multiple bizarre health issues. And I am particularly susceptible to heat exhaustion. And so I always watch myself pretty closely, and I always try and take good care of myself. So I got out that day and went to the ranger station, and they give you a map of the trail and everything, tell you where everything's at. And I failed to make any connection with water, or I didn't bring any water with me, and for some bizarre reason I just totally missed it that day. So I start out on this hike, and I'm feeling fine, feeling good, make the 2-mile hike, get to the bench, and I'm sitting there, and before I get there, the most incredible thing happens. On Pontoon Island, these Native American people were called the people of the owl, because they had an owl culture. They worshipped owls, and they had this big owl totem. So they were the people of the owl. So while I'm walking on the pathway, about maybe a quarter of the way into the walk, to the hike, I feel this presence behind me. And before I can even turn to look, this huge owl with like this 5-foot wingspan comes so close to me that I feel the rush of air on my face and in my ear as it glides past me right at eye level. And it glides past me, swoops down in front of me on the walking path, and glides along the walking path a little bit, and then swoops up into this tree over on the left part of the path and lands on this limb and sits there staring at me. And I'm just freaking out because here I am on the island of the people of the owl, and here's this owl manifesting this incredible, bizarre behavior. So I stop and I talk to it, and I thank it for the manifestation and everything. And I go on and finish the hike. So that takes me a good hour or so beyond that to get to the the end of the trail. So I sit there and enjoy that for a while, and then I say, well, I guess I better head back. And I've always loved being out in nature, out in the woods, and the further away I can get, the more I love it. And so it was with reluctance that I decided, well, I better go ahead and get back. So by then it's getting close to noon, and of course, Florida and the heat, humidity, and everything. And I'm walking along, and I begin to get really overheated, and I'm recognizing the warning sign of getting overheated. And I'm like, this is not good. And I haven't seen a soul on the trail. And a lot of these state parks here, which I've hiked regularly over the years, you could be out there, you could fall over, keel over, and it might be a day or two or more before anybody hiked that particular trail and found you. So I'm like, okay, this is not good. So I said, well, and I neglected to bring any water. I didn't bring any water with me, which is unusual because I've been an outdoorsman my entire life, ever since I was a kid. And I've hunted and camped and fished and done all this stuff out in the wild. Didn't bring any water. And I'm like, okay, this is just getting worse and worse. And I said, well, things go to hell in a handbasket. I've got my cell phone. I can call the ranger station. I look at my cell phone, and it's just about to die. It's just about dead. I said, okay, there goes that. And it's like all these things are just kind of set in motion in a weird way. And I'm like, man, I don't understand this. This is bizarre. So I'm walking along, and I start sweating like crazy, and I'm really overheated, and I'm starting to get just a little headachy and a little nauseated. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm getting in trouble here now. So I try to slow down to keep from walking so fast so that I don't generate more heat. But that's counterproductive because the more time I spend out in the heat, that's raising my temperature. So it's like a losing proposition. The river's right there, but you don't dare jump in because of all the alligators. So, it'd be useless to try and cool off that way. So I rounded the corner in the bend where that tree was, and there on that same branch is that same owl still sitting there after all this time, staring down at me and locks eyes with me, doesn't move. And so I communicate with it, and I say, look, I believe you're a spirit sent here to oversee me or to whatever. And I said, I made a really bad mistake today. And I said, I could be in real trouble here. I could literally keel over and die out here on this trail. And I said, if you can send me any help or give me any help, please do that. I would like to croak today out here in the wilderness. So the owl doesn't do anything, just sits there and locks eyes with me. So I leave it a blessing, and I continue to trudge on. And as I go, all of a sudden, I feel this other presence behind me. And I can tell it's a person. I can tell it's a large male behind me. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Maybe it's a worker out here coming out of the woods. Maybe he's got some water. So I turn around, and there's a person there, all right, but it's a large Native American spirit. And not in the flesh, but a spirit. And I'm like, okay, I'm fixing to die out here, and he's coming to cross me over. I'm just like feeling like the biggest idiot. And he's kind of shaking his head at me like, what have you done here, man? And so I'm like, I know. And he says, turn around. I'm going to march you safely out of here. So I turn around, and I physically feel him put his hand up on my shoulder, not as an impression, but as a literal physical weight on my shoulder. And as we begin to walk forward, this cooling breeze comes up out of nowhere and begins to cool me down enough that I can make it back to the ranger station. And right as we get close to the ranger station, he lets go of his grip, and I'm cooled down enough by then that I'm sort of okay. And I turn around and thank him, and he disappears, goes on about his business. And I get to the ranger station, drink tons of water and cool off and all that. but I literally would not have made it out of there. I don't think if it wasn't for him coming as a guardian angel and literally saving me that day.
Cool, definitely. So when it comes to Florida, I hear people say different things about the heat, but to you, do you think it's getting hotter every year? Because it seems like it to me. I'm just curious.
It seems that way to me too. We've been here, 16, 17 years now, something like that. We've been here nearly 2 decades now, and it seems like it's getting hotter every year. The humidity seems like it's increasing greatly.
Yes.
And I have asthma and COPD, so the humidity just kills me. It's like I can't hardly get outside and do anything in the summer, but it does seem like it's been getting hotter every year. And it was bad to begin with. I mean, look, I went to, when I was a teenager, I went to boot camp in Orlando for the Navy, and they don't even have that naval station there anymore. That's how long ago I was here. And back then, the heat and humidity was so bad that they would fly a black flag from the flagpole, and that meant that you couldn't exercise outside or run or do any kind of physical exertion outside because of the heat and humidity. And that was way back then. And that was for, healthy people, healthy recruits. So it does seem like it's gotten a lot worse as the years have gone by. Bad to begin with, but worse now.
Yeah, no, it's always been hot, but now it's like the Amazon or Vietnam out there or something.
Yeah, it's really, really sticky and really, really difficult to breathe. And for the first time ever, I noticed over the past 3, 4, 5-year period, people that don't have any breathing issues or health issues are saying that they feel like they step outside and it's like trying to breathe through a wet towel. And people that haven't had allergy problems or anything before are now having massive allergy problems. And mine have just gotten worse and worse and worse every year here. So something's going on.
There was something crazy. I'll have to send you the video, and I think it was World News Report, but it's some guy on YouTube. But it's legit, and he's very intelligent. But he was showing some 2.5 weird particles were in the area near Tallahassee, and he traced it to some mine. But he said those particles were like cancerous, and it was like a horrible, like somehow, I don't know how he did it, but there's a place he could go online that would show the particles. I'll have to send it to you, but it was very alarming and creepy. And he traced it to this weird mine and the hole in the ground and all this weird stuff. But it's definitely, it's not where I'm at, but it's still close. And I mean, who's to say that those mines aren't making something like that?
Well,
but I've also had weird stuff with the sun all the time that, I mean, I try not to say bad things about the sun because I've had experiences with it that are mystical on a lot of levels as well with things with it. But with heat, I remember passing out as a kid and stuff, and not 2 years ago, I remember passing out from the sun. Like, I've always had weird heat issues. But it's strange because a lot of times there's a mantra. I think I got it from Stevenson, a shaman guy, but I am the light of the sun. But there's been times where I've closed my eyes and let that white light fill my body. And I was in a gym not too long ago, and I saw a pink orb over every person in that gym, and I don't know what exactly it was, maybe their soul or something, but it's like I can do that and have kind of mystical experiences. And another time here at this house, I did it through the skylight thing and looked into a grandmother's room who she's passed now, but me and my fiance were doing hospice care with her. And I saw a being in there that seemed like a gray, but it seemed astral. And I had never seen grays before ever. And it seemed like it was standing in there. And I don't know if it was good or bad, but it's like it knew I saw it. And it was like the sun somehow gave me the vision to see it. It was weird, but later Michelle said that there was weird gray stuff happening here with the mother and stuff. So I don't know, but I have had some strange sun experiences. But and I guess that's how Superman gets his powers, right? In the sun, is that correct? It's like you get your powers from it, but it still kicks your ass.
Exactly.
It's a big ball of radiation.
Yeah, it is.
Like exuding radioactive stuff,
I have to tell you this story, and this is the first time I've told this on any podcast.
Yeah.
And since you mentioned the sun and your connection with that and your understanding of its weirdness, I think you'll get this. I'm also a professional artist and a photographer. I've been an artist and a photographer since I was a kid. And one of the things I love to do is shoot into the sun, which you're not supposed to do because you're not supposed to look at the sun. You'll burn your corneas or whatever. And also with a digital camera, you'll fry the sensor if you shoot into the sun too long or too much. But I enjoy doing that, and I get these neat starburst effects, and I shoot up at the sun and shoot into the clouds. And one photograph that I got when I shot the sun, there was right below it in the clouds. This was not a cloud that looked like a face. We all sit out and we go, "Oh, look at that cloud! Doesn't it kind of look like a turtle? That could be like it's 4 feet and there's its head." And oh yeah, I see it. It's not that. This is not something that looked like a face. This was a physical face in the clouds staring at me while I'm shooting it, while I'm photographing it. And I mean, the eyes are there, the pupils, the face, the nose and the nostrils, the lips, the whole 9 yards worth. And it freaked me. I almost jumped back from the computer when I saw it after I uploaded the files, and I was enlarging everything, looking at it. I was like, holy cow, look at this. So there are sky people, there are sky beings up there. But talking about the sun,
Yes.
then in relation to that, I was I'd ridden my motorcycle to an air show over in Daytona Beach, and I had parked and was sitting there on the bike, and I had a long lens on my camera, and I was shooting the air show. And in a pause, with this lull during the show, the sun was over here and to my right in the sky, and I just kind of swiveled over on my bike and held the camera up with one hand, looked through the viewfinder for a split second at the sun, had my sunglasses on, and just for a split second looked at the sun in preparation to shoot it. And when I looked at the sun, there was, the representations of the god Zeus, this long flowing hair and this flowing beard and everything. That was the visage that was shining forth in the sun, was that visage of like Zeus, that person with this long flowing hair and this long flowing beard, brilliantly white, but I could see every detail of the face and everything else. And it shocked me so much that I just kind of lowered the camera, and it was like, I need to get a picture of that. And I went back and shot it, and the camera didn't get anything, but I saw that as clearly as I see the one of you guys right now. And I was like, okay, maybe, we talk about the sun god or this, that, and the other. Well, maybe there is.
There's something to it. I've seen a being of light walk across. I was at the ocean, I think Panama City. It was like it was just walking through the sky near the sun, like a big angel. I've also seen one on a cloud that did its hand finger like this once with a friend a long time ago. We were partying and doing all kinds of troublesome stuff, but we both saw it back in the day.
Telling you, no.
Yeah. And then I've seen the beings of light many times. I've seen one just fly through the sky like it's Superman. And I wonder too if that's kind of what we are out of our bodies. There's so many theories to it and everything. But another weird one I've seen is like an amoeba type creature in the sky, kind of like a golden liquid. It was weird. Like it looked like it should be in the ocean or in a sci-fi novel, but it was in the sky and it looked alive, like some kind of aerial life that was not.
There's so many strange things out there. And I recall, let me see if I can think of his name here. I'm probably not going to be able to now. The guy that's, what is he, a physicist or something, and he's an expert. He does these examinations of pictures and film and thing. I'll think of his name here in a minute. But anyways, he's famous in the UFO community. But his wife hunts.
Oh yeah, he's the guy that works for MUFON, whatever his name is.
But his wife hunts. I'll get it here in a minute. His wife hunts.
His wife had this really bizarre experience with something
in the tree stand.
Bruce Maccabee. Bruce Maccabee.
Bruce Maccabee. Yes, thank you, Bruce Maccabee. So his wife was hunting, and she was in her tree stand, and she saw this thing. The Predator movie, where this kind of translucent thing moves from tree to tree and all that. She was sitting there and saw this large translucent being reach out from the tree it was hiding behind to this other tree and pull itself over through the air and then subsequently vanish. And she took a picture of it and the picture came out all kinds of weird and distorted, and the format of the camera somehow changed internally. You have to listen to it, and Bruce explains how it's not possible for that to happen. But she saw that, and there's so many people now that since I became aware of that, I've become aware of other stories of people seeing these predator-like creatures going through the woods and things, and a lot of weird phenomena like you've seen, like I've seen, we all have. And so there's a lot of things out there that people have to be aware of. That look, we inhabit this planet with all kinds of other intelligences, and we have to recognize that, and we have to be respectful of these beings and these intelligences. I can't stand the ghost hunters on these shows that go into places cursing the ghosts and challenging the ghosts, and then
they yell at them and stuff. That's just me crazy.
It's ridiculous. And then they jump and scream and cry like little girls and run if the ghosts manifest, if they do anything.
Exactly.
And it's like, so you have to go into all of this with respect. I have seen demonstrations of spiritual power from the other side that convince me that if they wanted to, they could do some serious harm to us if they desired. And so you approach that kind of power and that kind of ability with respect. And when I do paranormal investigations, even as a young man, even as a kid, I would always either ask permission or say, look, this is why I'm here. And I give you respect, and I'm not trying to, fulfill my ego or stir anything up I want to know why you're here. And if you have a message and what you might can convey, what can I learn from you? Can you learn anything from me? And see if there's a dialogue or a discourse there. So that's the way we have to learn to approach the other side, and we have to approach these beings. And we have to realize that there is immense spiritual power out there. I mean, it's a frequent occurrence where ghosts, spirits, entities, whatever, manipulate things, make things appear, make things disappear, steal things, slam doors, make the sound of footsteps, all these things. So there's all that power there, and we have to acknowledge that. We have to respect that. And then we have to continue to try and learn more about that realm. As far as we come and for all we have, we're still woefully, woefully ignorant of just exactly how everything comes together and what it all is. And it's like EVP, for example. We've done EVP for, 100 years now or whatever. And we still get George, and that's the extent of it. With our best equipment, our best machinery, all these advances and everything else, and we still get these little snippets of things that are so incomplete. And I think that what we have to push toward, I was talking with a guy the other day that's a professional musician, and he uploads his own music and does his own thing with all these equalizers and software and all this stuff. And he works on other people's music. And he said, I can do anything on the planet with sound, any kind of sound, whether it's music or anything else. He said, I know how to manipulate every bit of the spectrum, every bit of software, everything to do. And he said, when I upload EVP, I cannot find the frequency that these voices are speaking on. And we both agreed that when that happens, when we discover what that frequency is, that's going to be such a major breakthrough, because then we're going to have real-time communication with the other side. But the point of it is that we just have so far to go. For as far as we've come, we haven't really even scratched the surface.
And I know you have mentioned that some spirits have stolen things from you. What kind of stuff have they taken from you?
Oh yeah, I used to wear earrings a lot, and I had this one earring I really loved. It was this big gold skull and crossbone earring, and I was wearing it one day, and I decided I was going to lay down, take a nap early in the afternoon. And in my bedroom, I had a bed, I had my recliner, I had a white table by my recliner with nothing on it. And so I took my gold earring off and put it in the center of that white table. Now, you can't miss that. It sticks out like a sore thumb, this gold on the white. So I took my nap, and I woke up, and it was only about mid-afternoon. I said, you know what? It's a beautiful day. I'm going to go eat Mexican food at my favorite restaurant. So I looked over at that earring, and I said, I'm going to wear that earring. And I started to get it, and I said, no, for some reason I changed my mind. I said, I'm going to pick another earring. So I walked around my bed, to my nightstand, opened up the drawer, started to get a different earring out. And for some crazy reason, I said, nah, I'm going to go back and get my gold earring. So I walked back around the bed. So we're talking, 30 seconds maximum here. And I walked around the bed back to the white table, and the earring was gone. It completely vanished. So they've stolen some things over the years, but they've also brought me some things over the years. So it's kind of balanced out.
Nice, for sure. And it's do you think, I mean, do they do it just to be tricksters, or I mean, what do they do with it? It's just strange that I guess they're taking a physical thing and taking it into their reality,
Right.
or are they just doing it to be tricksterish?
Well, I don't think so. I think a lot of it is just they want you to have this understanding, this dynamic experience that confirms that the other side is absolutely real, that these experiences are real. And that kind of furthers your interest and kind of makes you feel a little closer to the other side. And then I think that some, perhaps over there, not necessarily in a trickster way, but kind of like in a, maybe like in a crow's mind type of way, shiny object, I got to have that. I'm taking that, And I think that some of these entities on the other side, look, we know that our deceased friends and loved ones are over there, but they're human. They think human, they react human, they have human emotions. And then you get into the categories of guardian angel presences and other types of entities and beings like nature spirits and all these things. They were never human, and they're not human. And they don't think and feel necessarily as we do. It doesn't mean they don't understand us or that they can't empathize, but their thoughts and ways are not like ours. And so for them, it may be they see something and say, well, there's no harm if I take this. It's not going to hurt the guy. It's not going to, not going to put a dent in his pocketbook or anything, not going to hurt his health. I want it. And so it may be some of that. I think these nature spirits, I've had lots of experience with these types of entities and nature spirits and things over the years. And they just have an entirely different way of looking at things and acting and reacting. And with them, I've learned that they can be very sensitive about things, and they are very powerful. So you do approach them with a lot of respect.
I know, and there's a book by Jeffrey Mishla of Roots of Consciousness, and some astronomer, and it says some stars are indeed deities. And I've noticed that some stars do seem like they're beings of light as well. Yeah. And it's kind of like I've seen into that quantum realm around the Earth and seen them standing around kind of like talking, and I have to wonder if that's kind of where we go when we die, like it's a staging area or something. It's kind of like looking at a Sims game where everyone's like a being of light. Right. And I've had those kind of weird experiences. But I know you had mentioned some bizarre experiences with stars. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, and I think the description you gave that these stars may be beings or may be intelligences, some of them, that's so apropos to what I've experienced, because I was out one night on the balcony and looking at the stars, and this one star suddenly turned red and flashed at me a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. So I waved at it. And when I waved at it, it flashed at me again. Oh, that's okay. Mine does that all the time. And so I wave at it again, and it flashes again. So my wife walks out on the balcony, and she goes, what in the world are you doing? And I said, watch. See that star up there, that one that looks red? And she goes, yeah. And I said, watch this. And I waved at it, and it flashes a couple of times. And I wave at it, and it flashes a couple of times. And she was like, I'm going back inside. Bye. So I do believe that some stars are like entities, intelligences, beings, or whatever, or perhaps controlled or manipulated by intelligences. But then the one really, really bizarre experience I had, and we all know stars are gaseous balls, right? They're round objects. They're big balls of fire in essence. Our sun is a star. But when I was young, I experienced this pentagram-shaped star, exactly like what you draw in school for Halloween on your little coloring paper you're making, a 5-pointed pentagram, about the size, about as tall as the side of a house, about a foot thick. It was flat. And the way that I saw it, my mother and I had gone up to the north part of town to visit some friends of ours, and they had a boy my age, and so we played together while they visited. And my mother parked on the wrong side of the street, facing this vacant lot that was across the street from them. And typical West Texas summer, it's hot and dry, and it was always, fire danger and vacant lots and things. And this lot was full of scrub brush and cactus and mesquite trees and all this type of thing. So we didn't have an air conditioner in this old car, and you didn't roll the windows up till at night when you were done. You rolled the windows up and locked the car up. You didn't roll them up during the day because you'd suffocate. Literally, you'd have a heat stroke. So all the windows are down in the car, and we get through visiting, come out, and it's about the darkest stage of twilight where you need your lights to drive. And we get in the car and we say goodbye to our friends, and they close the door. And Mom starts the car, and coming down out of the sky, falling down out of the sky right in front of us is this pentagram, this yellow glowing pentagram, trailing this little yellow phosphorescent trail behind it as it falls, falling super, super slow, and it's falling right into that vacant lot. And my mother absolutely panics and says, roll up the windows and lock the doors, roll up the windows and lock the doors. And I'm like, let's go see what this thing is. And she's like, roll up the windows and lock the doors. She's terrified. And so I'm jumping around in the car from its front seat to back and rolling up the windows, locking the doors. And she starts to drive off. And I said, Mom, if this thing falls in the vacant lot, if it's some kind of fire or flame or whatever it is, it's going to set that lot on fire. And wouldn't our friend's house be in danger? Shouldn't we wait to see what happens in case we need to go up and tell them to call the fire department or something? So reluctantly, she agreed that made sense. So we sit there and watch this thing fall down in the vacant lot, hit ground, and then just slowly wink out, just fade in upon itself until there was nothing left and just wink out. And when that happened, my mother drove out of there like a bat out of hell and wouldn't let me roll the windows down for like a mile or more. We're sitting there suffocating. I'm like, Mom, can we roll the windows down now? She was just terrified. And so finally we rolled the windows down. And I have never really been able to assign any concrete meaning or purpose to that other than just, wow, look at this, right place, right time, and here's this manifestation. Was it something further meant for me to continue with my awakening? I don't know. And my wife always jokes with me. She says, well, Mitch, you were going to be a star someday. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm still waiting. So, but that was one of the most phenomenal experiences I've ever had.
Was that different from the Roswell UFO Museum experience, or is that the same one? That's a different experience, right?
That's a different experience. Yeah. When I went to the Roswell UFO Museum, I had gone to Alien Encounter 98, which is back in 1998. They had this thing called Alien Encounter 98, and there were a lot of well-known lecturers there. Stanton Friedman was there. I got to hear him lecture, and I went to give readings. So one morning before I started doing readings, I said, well, I can't be here and not go see the Roswell UFO Museum. I got to do the touristy thing and see that. So I went down, I got there early and it wasn't open yet. So I'm standing out on the sidewalk and looking at the windows and things and waiting for it to open. And there's not much foot traffic. It was pretty sparse. And this lady walks down the sidewalk and we nod at each other and she says hi and I say hi. And she goes, oh, you waiting to see are you going into the museum? And I said, yeah, I'm here a little early. It's not open yet. And she said, is this your first time to go to the UFO museum? And I said, yes, ma'am, it is. I said, as a matter of fact, it's my first time in Roswell. And she goes, oh, well, where do you live? And I said, well, I live in Texas. I said, I was actually born in Carlsbad. But I said, I've never lived there, and I've never been back to New Mexico, and I've never been to Roswell. It's my first time here and first time to the UFO museum. And she goes, oh, well, that's interesting. And she says, well, what do you do? Why are you here? And I thought, oh, boy, here it comes. So I tell her, I said, well, I'm a psychic, and I'm here giving readings, and I'm prepared for, oh, that's nice, and see you later, some kind of brush off or something. And she looks at me for a little bit, and she goes, okay, well, you'll understand what I'm going to tell you then. I'm like, okay, now what's coming? So she says, when I was a kid, me and my brother were outside playing, and we saw the UFO fly over, and we saw it crash off over in the distance. And I was like, you have got my attention. And so she said, even though we were kids, we knew it wasn't a plane. We knew it wasn't a weather balloon. We knew it wasn't a blimp. We knew it wasn't a helicopter. It was a UFO. And she said, from the way it moved through the atmosphere as it flew, we could tell that it was in some kind of trouble. And then over in the distance, we saw it crash. And she said, my brother and I saw that. And I was like, wow. I was so amazed I couldn't see straight. And I said, here you are, this eyewitness to this. I said, why aren't more people like you coming forward and telling this story? And she said, well, when this happened, my family and a lot of other people in Roswell, and of course, this is a pretty common story, but she reiterated it. She said, my family and a lot of people in Roswell were contacted by military personnel, by some type of government personnel, or people we assumed were government personnel. And then by some people we didn't know who the heck they were. And the basic thing that they all told us was, if you speak about this to anybody, your bones are going to be found out in the desert, quote unquote. And I was like, holy cow. And she said, yeah. And she said, if you're a guy with a lot of grit and a lot of moxie, and you're like, I'm not scared, bring it, She said, that's fine. But most of the people involved had kids, had wives, and you don't want your family harmed. So, what do? You toe the party line and you shut up. And about that time, she looked up and down the street like this a couple of times and said, I've said too much. I'm sorry. I have to go by, and walked off. So all those years later, that fear was still there. And so I imagine that's why a lot of people that have had experiences have never come forward, is either they've been threatened or they know of people that have been threatened, and the fear factors there for them.
Yeah, but the UFO subject's definitely heated up on the news a lot, with all different stations. That's been very amusing for sure. I've interviewed Stanton Friedman, God rest his soul, and had some good experiences interviewing him many, many moons ago. We used to do these little chat interviews where it was just typing and no audio, and this is a long time ago, but I had to stay on the phone with him to help him with the tech stuff while he did it. So I was on the phone with him for hours helping him. And basically people would, write a question to him, and then he'd type it out and stuff. That's how I kind of started doing this. And then it kind of morphed into a podcast. And here we are 13 years later. But yeah, Stanton Friedman definitely missed for sure. Yep. And Jim Mars, so many greats have passed. And lately I've noticed there's been a lot of, which I'm not that familiar with. I mean, I know a little bit about Russ Dizdar. I know he sent me his book a long time ago, but I mean, I'm no expert in what he talks about. Some of it's pretty weird, but I guess there's probably some truth to it. But I know he passed recently. Been so many, and a lot of it has been Robert David Steele. There's been a bunch of people. I've interviewed Robert David Steele before on here. And a lot of them, of course, were kind of, talking smack about COVID. And then suddenly, next thing you know, they croak from it, which is kind of sad. That's been happening a lot with some of these personalities and everything. Right. I know one thing that's kind of popular right now, and I'm sure Wham has heard of this, and I don't know if you have, but let us know if you have, that Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Have you been hearing the little buzz about that lately? It's a sequel book to that.
Yeah.
And supposedly Stephanie shared it. I didn't know it was even going on or whatever. Basically, I guess what I've gathered from it is there were military personnel that went out to Skinwalker Ranch with Robert Bigelow, and then the military personnel went back to their homes and had phenomenon follow them. And then it said something about trying to harm their children or something weird. I haven't read the book yet. I ordered it. I'll read it eventually. But that's been buzzing pretty heavy right now. But that Hunt for the Skinwalker was one of my first books I had read about paranormal stuff, and it's a really good book. It's definitely creepy as hell, but it's the sequel to it. Is Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. They're going Fruit Loops over it right now on every station, pretty much. But
well, they've been talking a long time about people at the ranch that phenomena does follow them, that it does stick with people and follow them after they leave the ranch. But the interesting thing for me was to see them. I tweeted to Brandon Fugel, and I said, Brandon, look, science is a valuable tool in the paranormal, but I said not as good as a good psychic or medium or shaman, for the simple reason that for all of your equipment, all that equipment does is say, here's something, and that's all. You don't know what that something is, who it is, why it's there, where it came from, what its message is, what its intent or purpose is. All science says is we got something, and that's it. And to get past that, I told Brandon in the tweet, I said, you're going to have to send in some shamans, some legitimate, vetted, reliable psychics, some mediums, something, because that's where the information, the connection is going to come from. And in this the second season, they have the Jewish rabbi that went there and did the ritual to open up the portal. And he was talking about making this connection with the spirits that were there. And some of those spirits had been there for eons and eons. And some of it was just kind of their property or where they lived or what they, did there, their purpose and being for being there. And he did this ritual to open up this portal, and they caught it on film. When he did the ritual to open a portal, the temperature dropped like 20 degrees immediately, and where the camera was pointed in this direction where he had opened the portal up, a part of the scene that should have been visible in the camera was like totally gone, obliterated, just vacant or absent. So that's when you begin to make progress, is when you get people in there that know how to do these things, that are sensitive to these things, and you start interacting with these beings and finding out who and what they are, why they're there. And, I suspect that there are multiple dimensions, multiple layers to Skinwalker, just like there are every place else.
Yes.
We all live in this overlapping of spiritual realms and dimensions. And it's just like we're constantly surrounded by waves of various types. The Earth emits X-rays, magnetic waves, and radio waves are going through the air right now around all of us, through all these various stations, and cell phone waves and so on and so forth. So we live in that dimension all the time with all these things going on, and we're not aware of it. But if you get a radio, you tune it to a certain station, all of a sudden what's invisible and not audible is there.
Yes.
And so basically for me, the same thing with seeking out spirits and making contact with them, being able to tune in to that spirit and have a conversation, have communication with that spirit, and find out why they're there and what they want to reveal and what their purpose is, what they're trying to communicate. And some of it may be nothing more than just, hey, this is my turf, leave me alone, I'll leave you alone type thing.
That's kind of what it seems like. What do you think? I want to get back into Knox in the Attic, but what do you think about the radiation stuff there? That's the weird stuff. They're getting radiation burns and
that was really strange.
Like
that. The scientist got the severe radiation burn, and nobody else did. And a friend and I were discussing that, and I said he was targeted. It was like the other side of it, because everybody went there as basically a skeptic and science. And we're going to get to the bottom of this with science. And for me, he was targeted. It was like, something went, okay, we're going to show this guy something he has no way to explain. And they did. So I think he was literally targeted. And
there was a wound with the skull enlargement or something with another one. It seems dangerous there. Like, it's like, are these guys going to die there? It's pretty creepy
I
stuff.
think, again, you have to go in with this ultimate respect. And, you have to go in, don't have an attitude. Don't think, okay, we've got the answer. We've got science. We've got this. We've got that. And don't think that you're going to understand everything anyways, because with all of my years of experience in the paranormal, I've had over 1,000 physical paranormal manifestations occur in my life. And these are things that actually occur on the physical realm. We've captured them on camera, audio, video. Other people have witnessed them. So for all of those experiences that I've had, there's still so much that I don't know and so much I'm still trying to learn and find out. And we make the mistake of thinking that the other side is like this little happy puppy dog sitting there wagging its tail, just waiting for us to command it or ask it for things or give us this or give us that. It's not like that at all. These entities, these beings, these energies, these power, they have their own purpose, their own life, their own existence, their own reasoning, and so on and so forth. So, a lot of times it may be just like if you meet somebody here at a bus stop and you sit down and attempt small talk, that person may, and just ignore you and turn away and not want to talk to you, not want to be involved with you. They got their own thing going on, or they're just not that friendly or whatever. They're not dangerous. They're not malevolent. They just don't want to be pestered with you right then. And it may be that way a lot of times with the other side. We're, hey, give me a sign, do this, do that. And they're like, go away. I'm hanging out here for a specific purpose or a specific reason, and I'm not interacting with you right now, and I'm not going to interact with you right now. So I think a lot of it may be that. And some of these manifestations I've thought about over the years may just be the equivalent of meeting a stranger at the bus stop and, hi, how are you today? Oh, I'm tired. Yeah, me too. Be glad the work week's over and all that. It's just a momentary connection with somebody, just kind of reinforces our humanity. And maybe sometimes those people on the other side or entities on the other side just want to make that little connection. Just, hey, we're here. We see you, watching over you. How you doing? I'm doing good. How are you? All right. And nothing more profound than that. And then again, you have those profound life-saving experiences like the guardian angel experiences I've had. So I think it ranges the full gamut, and you have to watch what you assign what to. You don't have a default that you automatically go to.
Definitely. And it seems like they may live, like some kind of beings live there. And then the cattle mutilation, I mean, maybe they're eating the cows. I don't really know. There's weird stuff going on with that, but maybe a food source or experiments or whatever. But I know those cattle mutilation situations get definitely crazy as hell for sure.
Yeah,
Some of that stuff.
That's really bizarre. And, you have to look at whatever power is doing that. Like you say, if it's a food source, you say, well, okay, it's still cruel. Nature is cruel. But if it's for some type of experiment or whatever, then it's like, okay, now you're taking somebody's property and or livelihood and destroying that. And, that's not a moral or ethical thing to do. So you have to try and figure out why things are happening.
Yes, definitely. No doubt about it. Well, when it comes to Knox in the attic, would you like to tell that story? And I'd like to definitely get you to tell some stories that you think would be good for the Halloween time, because I like to have the infamous Halloween lineup, and you're part of that. So we'd definitely like to hear some Halloweenish kind of stuff. Like, what is Knox in the attic? That's obviously the story that, you base the title of your book on.
Right. And that's a good Halloweenish story. My wife and I, we were living, like I said, in New York at the time. And we had this 2-story home with a basement and an attic. And it was on a kind of a semi-business street. There were residences, but then right across the street, there was a store and a restaurant. And a little further down the street, a car dealership, and interspersed with that, residential houses. So it was kind of an odd thing, but it was neat. And the houses were pretty close together. We were real close to our neighbor. And shortly after I moved in that house with my wife, we began to hear from the attic this loud banging sound that was like somebody took a hammer and was hitting the rafters. And it was like, bam, 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 bam. And sometimes it would be just a few strikes, a few hits, and then nothing for the rest of the day or a day or two, or maybe a week or two. Other times it would be several loud strikes, and then after a little while, an hour or two, some more. And the first time it happened, we looked at each other, and I was like, what in the world? So I went up into the attic, and it was very chill, very cold, paranormal cold. And so I asked if anyone there had any type of message for me or to convey to my wife or anyone else in the family or anything, and didn't receive anything. So I said, well, okay, you're welcome here. You don't frighten us. We're not afraid of you, and you're not disturbing us. We know you're communicating for whatever reason, and you're welcome here and welcome to communicate. So that would occur frequently, and it got louder and louder and more frequent as time went by. And we would all hear it, and the animals would hear it. The cats would, get bushy tails and run and hide every time they heard it, all this type of thing. And unbeknownst to us, it was so loud that our neighbors could hear it. Like if they were outside in their yard or something, or maybe had a window open in the house, they could hear the banging coming from our attic. And the way I discovered that was I was across the street at the restaurant one evening, and I was sitting there at the bar having a drink, and our next door neighbor came in, and she came over to me and she goes, "What's all that loud banging coming out of your house?" And she didn't know what I did. She didn't know I was a psychic. And I said, "Oh, we're remodeling the house." And she says, "So late at night?" And I said, "Well, sometimes that's the only time the guy can come is in the evening to work." And okay. And she looks at me kind of funny and let it go and went on off. But I discovered then I would be out in the yard and I would hear the banging coming from the attic, the knocking so loud that I could hear it outside. And it finally got to the point that one time it was like somebody took a small hand sledge, not a regular hammer, but a small hand sledge, that heavy a hammer, and was like just banging on the floor, the rafters for all they were worth. It was the loudest it had ever been. And I was like, okay, I got to go see what's up now. So I went up, and there had been a small pile of lumber there in the attic. And I had never touched it, messed with it, just left it there. And when I went up, the pile of lumber had been scooted away from the wall, and there was this little lace heart laying there on the floor. And I was like, oh, what a delightful gift. Why, thank you. And I picked up the lace heart, scooted the pile of lumber back, and the knocking stopped and never occurred again after that. But that's a good Halloween story because it went on for a good long time, and it was really audible. And like I said, other people heard it, and really a phenomenal occurrence. And I still have the little lace heart, by the way.
It's definitely a weird one when you don't know what it is and the noise that you hear, and definitely strange. Even the neighbors hearing it, it's definitely loud. This house that I'm at, I live with my fiance, Christina, and we took care of her grandmother who passed. She was 91, but there's been weird stuff here. Like we had a glass blow up on the countertop, and no one was near it. We were in the kitchen far away from it. It hadn't been hot and cold or anything. Had a fruit cocktail in it. It was crystal strong glass. And maybe there's a scientific reason. I don't know, but I've never seen a glass shatter like that for no reason. Right. And another thing that happened here, something hit the bed late at night. And we were half asleep. I got up with the flashlight thinking something fell off a shelf and hit the bed, and it did nothing fell. It was like something hit the bed late at night. So there's been weird stuff here, and I'll never say ghosts are boring anymore to anyone. I used to say ghosts are boring. I like UFOs. But,
now ghosts are absolutely not boring.
Like, we'll show you boring.
Exactly.
Michelle and them said that there may have been some native burial mounds disturbed by an uncle in the subdivision building and stuff around here, and like there's some uneasy kind of weird things with lights and stuff like that, and things like that. And when you have those experiences, of course, you think of horror movies with the Amityville and all that stuff, and those don't end well, so you get really paranoid. For sure.
Well, they're not going to hurt you.
Yeah, there's not been much else. There's been some anxiety and uneasy kind of stuff where I wonder, like, did the grandmother leave? I hope so, because she was kind of anxious all the time when she was alive. And sometimes I jokingly say the dead may not leave, but I think they do, and hopefully go into the light.
Well, when you cross over to the other side, you determine where you're going to go and where you're going to stay and for how long and whatever. And so people aren't earthbound. They just choose to be around someplace. And then we look at them and say, okay, we see their spirit here, and this is the place where they were at, and why haven't they moved on? Are they stuck or whatever? But we view it from such a limited perspective. We may see them as a ghost and see them for 15 seconds, let's say, which would be a really long time. But they may be living this entire different life on the other side, and they may have been on the other side of the world doing something, and they came back to visit with us for 15 seconds, So we have to understand that when you go to the other side, it's your volition. You carry your will, you carry your emotions, you carry your thoughts, memories, and everything, and you make the determination as to what you're going to do, who you're going to hang around, and why, and for how long. And again, we have to realize that they may be there for just a very small amount of time, and then they're off doing something else. So,
Definitely. And I had a dog pass away that was with me for 16 years. And after that, his name was Jack. He's a Beagle Jack Russell mix. But I had some weird things happen where I saw a glimmer of him out of the corner of my eye. Christina felt him in the kitchen when she was cooking, something on her leg and stuff like that. Had some weird bed kind of stuff that like it felt like something was on the bed. And I do think we're still connected to them, but it definitely, it sucks when that happens, of course. You think of Frank and Weenie and all that stuff, your ghost dog. And you worry about them, like, where are they? I better be seeing him again. And, when I croak, he better be there. Exactly. I'm going to go looking for someone.
I had two of my pets, and I write about this in my latest book. I had two of my pets come back from the dead and visit me in the flesh, and I actually got to touch one that came back from the dead. So they do survive, and sometimes they are able to come back physically and make that connection for just a small amount of time, just to let us know, hey, made it, I'm okay, still love you, still here, I'll see you when you get to the other side. So those were really, really phenomenal experiences to have.
Seems like a connection still carries on.
Exactly.
Wham, is there anything you'd like to address or ask? Or?
Well, everything you guys have been talking about, tallies with my experiences. I was just thinking about, I was trying to remember, like, what was the first paranormal experience that I ever had? Because I grew up in a household where it was normal. My dad was sort of into it, but from a very religious perspective, a particular perspective, which was kind of a limited perspective. But he had lots of ghost experiences, and there was always something going on. I mean, the first really conscious thing that I remember was the UFO experience I had when I was 6, which I've talked about on the show before. But there were a lot of other experiences that if I think about, they were there. Just kind of weird presences and things going on, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting that you all ended up here talking about animals, because I don't know if either of you listened to the Unsolved Mysteries podcast, but they have a weekly, the same producers that created the original show.
Right.
They have a weekly podcast now that comes out every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And you can just look it up on Unsolved Mysteries and, just Google it, and it's on their website, or, and it's actually really good. I mean, it's based it's a similar format to, the format, oddly enough, is similar to NPR. So it's kind of like NPR for the paranormal.
Right.
But it's really very good. And this last week, they did a whole thing on this guy who specializes in helping people connect with their deceased pets.
Right.
And I think the guy's name is Robert Boutreau or something like that. He's got several books out. But anyway, I think the thing that was most interesting to me, because I've certainly had experiences with past pets. In fact, I had this one cat. And it's been like over 20 years since he passed. And he still regularly shows up, not only for me, but for a couple of other people. Excellent. He shows up in dreams, or right. And he was, I think he was an advanced soul in a cat form, is what I think personally. But because he was certainly more than a cat, even in his life. Mm-hmm. But I've certainly had experiences with animals. I think that, and I lived in a haunted house in Kansas City, Missouri, that clearly had a number of different beings that hung out in it, and there were several different types of experiences. This, right. By the way, for you, Jeffrey, this was the house that I lived in when they found out that that guy that I knew who was a serial killer who lived down the street, when they arrested him. This was the house I was living in at the time.
Delightful neighbor.
Well, there you are. But
can we say his name?
Oh, Bob Berdella. Yeah, Bob Berdella.
Yeah, okay. It's a creepy one. I've seen a little bit about that. That's like creepy as hell.
Very, very freaky. But the house, even before then, the house had a lot of just weird experiences in it. Like there were poltergeist things that happened upstairs, and I was asleep in my bedroom and was awakened to the shrieks of my roommate, who had just come home, and she was coming up the stairs. She had to go. She lived on the floor above me. Our apartment was like a 2-story apartment, and she was coming up the stairs and come around the corner and had seen what looked like a very clear image of a man in a plaid shirt standing at the top of the stairs. And then he turned and walked into the living room and disappeared. And that was right by my door, right by my bedroom door. And so she thought it was an intruder, and just started screaming, and it woke me up, and I was like, what? And she told me. And so, there were things like that. And then there was also, in that apartment, there was what I'm pretty sure was a ghost cat or little dog, because I had 2 cats at the time, including the one really cool cat. And they would play with this thing that I couldn't see, that they were clearly like chasing and playing, just like they would be playing with another animal. And then all of a sudden it would clearly disappear to them. And then they would be like looking around like where it was.
Where'd it go?
Yeah. And there were a number of times I had to like eventually, because of the nature of how the manic runs that my cats would do, they would like run through the apartment and then like at night and then like run up the top of my bed and like launch themselves off my head. So I had to make them stop doing that. So I shut them out of my bedroom. And I had my own bathroom. So there were many times, this happened several times, where I'd go into my bathroom and I'd be sitting down and I'd feel something rub up against my leg. And without thinking about it, I'd reach down to pet him, and there was nothing there.
Right.
It was just. So I think it was a cat, is what I think it was.
Yeah.
But and that was. I mean, I think almost every house I've ever lived in, that's been a house, not an apartment, but a house, because those were like apartments that were in a part of a house. I think that almost every house I've ever lived in has been haunted by something. Yeah. The house I live in now, it's pretty mild. It's more like just the old nature of the house itself talking. And stuff comes out every now and then. Although I've had experiences where I had this one experience a few years ago here. I'd lived here for about a year, and I had done some like ritual stuff out in the backyard, some offering stuff, and we have like a medicine wheel out in the backyard, and I'd gone to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and the window, it was summer outside, so the windows were all open, and the door was open so that I could get air through it. And I woke up and I heard very clearly from here, the office where I'm sitting. I was in the bedroom, which is right next door. Very clearly where I was sitting, I heard something say, "She lives here." Just like that, like he was talking. Said, "She lives here," and I got this really clear image of like 2 beings that were like in my office. And from the bedroom, I said out loud, "Get out!" Just like that. Get out! Don't wake me up like this, because that's sort of a rule that I have, that I sort of announce to, what the house I'm living in is, that I don't care who lives here. They can come back and forth. They can do whatever they want, but do not wake me up in the middle of the night. Do not scare me. That pisses me off. It makes me really mad.
Right.
If you need to say something to me or need to do something, have the good manners to do it. You can do it at night, but just do it when I'm awake. None of this waking up with you staring over at me business. None of that. I'm just like really clear about it. And and it's worked pretty well. I don't have those kinds of really scary experiences most of the time that a lot of people have. Because I've come to the conclusion that if you do your spiritual work and you are pretty clear about things, that there are sort of these rules that the beings are supposed to follow, in terms of we live here in this realm or in this sort of plane, and they live in their planes, all their different planes, and all of our planes interact, and sometimes we bump into each other, right?
Sure.
But it's important that they respect us here and we respect them there.
Yeah.
So as long as there's respect and courtesy, I'm not saying that there aren't buttholes in other places, because there are buttholes here. So I figure
sure. Absolutely.
Buttholes everywhere. But I haven't had some of the problems that some people have had because of that, I think, because the fact is that we have a right to be here too.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Because we're here. So I think it's perfectly fine to assert that.
Yep.
But,
one thing I want to ask, what is Order of the Good Death?
Oh, Order of the Good Death. Oh, this is my T-shirt. And I will tell you this. Order of the Good Death is a national organization which was founded by Caitlin. What's her last name? Ask a Mortician, the YouTuber.
Okay.
And what it is it's an organization. She's a funeral director in LA, but it's been founded by a bunch of other people too. And they are devoted to reforming the funeral practices in the United States, and to help Americans become more accepting of death, not in a morbid way, but in a realistic way. Whatever your beliefs about it all. I mean, I think that she herself, her last name is Doty. That's right, Caitlin Doty. I think she herself is probably an agnostic, so she's not like very spiritual in the kind of classic way, but she has no problems with people that are. So, it's kind of like death is what happens to us. I have another one of her shirts. I'm a Patreon person and I support her. I have this shirt here, which I do not have on, but it shows a person. It shows the process of decomposition.
Oh man, that's creepy. I like it.
And then I have another T-shirt that says "Future Corpse" on it.
We're all going to get there. We're all going to make that transition.
I am careful about where I wear that one though, because of COVID. I don't, that might trigger.
What's her channel again on YouTube? I know I've heard of it.
It's called Ask a Mortician.
Okay. One thing, I need to plug this Joe thing real fast. I've almost forgot about it. He's going to kill me. WritersOfTheFuture.com, Writers and Illustrators of the Future. That's WritersOfTheFuture.com. Check it out. They have a podcast. I know Joe's involved and interviewed a lot of them, a lot of science fiction books and things like that. Check it out. It's WritersOfTheFuture.com. And John, what was this story about, speaking of death, On the Trail of an Assassin?
I was selected to be in an episode, a series actually. It was supposed to go to a series for the History Channel. It would be titled Psychic History, and each week we would explore from a psychic perspective some historical event. So the first thing that we did was to explore the assassination of Lincoln. And the great thing about that was I was the perfect person to do this from a psychic perspective, because I am a horrible, horrible student of history. I don't know anything about it. I hate it. I don't like it. Don't want to study it. Don't want to know anything about it. I was the guy in school that wrote the answers in pen on his hand to try and pass the history test. That was me. So my producer
I would have hated you then, because I'm a history teacher.
Yeah, there you go. My producer was like, if this guy comes up with anything at all, it's going to be legitimate, because he's such a poor student of history. Yeah. So we got access by virtue of this being one of the largest media companies in New York and the History Channel in concert. That gave us the cachet to have access to all of these places like Ford's Theater, the Peterson House, the Mud House, with no tourists there. It was just the docents, and they let us in, and it was me and the film crew, and we went in and just had the run of the place for basically as long as we wanted to be there, and whatever I picked up, and we filmed all of that, and the energy in those places is just overwhelming, because you can change the environment of a place. You can change the furniture, you can paint, you can remodel, whatever. That doesn't change the energy of whatever event happened there. So all of that residual energy is still there. And I was picking up on all of that and all the things that happened, all the things that went on. And then one of the things that I picked up about Lincoln was that, it's well known that Lincoln had premonitions and was very involved in the spiritual realm. And when Booth burst through the door to shoot Lincoln, I think Lincoln had already had a premonition of his death, maybe the night before or a few nights before. And I think he already knew that was coming. And I picked up, while I was standing there by the presidential box where Lincoln was shot, I picked up that Lincoln just immediately knew when the door burst open, like, this is it. He knew his time had come. He knew what was happening. And he was very resigned about it, and he was not fearful at all. And then doing my own research years later, I found out that Lincoln had over 10,000 death threats during the time he was in office.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a ballsy guy, to keep doing what he's doing and live the way he lives. So that was why he didn't exhibit any fear or anything when this happened. But the really great things about the podcast, we approached this with a lot of respect, with a lot of sincerity, and it didn't have the silly sound effects or visual effects or any of this kind of stuff. And we were able to get paranormal phenomena on film, which was really exciting. One thing, we went to the Mud House, and we were there late after dark, and we're filming. And I think we may have been, now this is over a decade ago that we shot this pilot, and I think we may have been the very first to use FLIR, forward-looking infrared radiation, in a paranormal show. And we were shooting with both the regular camera and the FLIR camera. And the FLIR camera, on the black and white setting, white is heat and black is cold. So we were filming upstairs, and we all heard this sound. It sounded like a large stick snapping downstairs. And I said, there's our ghost. So we come downstairs, and I said, I believe this was Mrs. Mudd. I believe that it's her. And she made the noise, and I said, Mrs. Mudd, was that you? And I said, she tells me that it's her and that she's here. And I said, she's off over to my right, and they're filming me with a FLIR. And I said, she's off over to my right, she's walking my way. And I said, she's passing through me. I feel her going through me. And she come out the other side. Well, when I said that on the FLIR camera, there were footsteps, small women's footsteps, dressed in what would be period era shoes for the time. And they were black, indicating cold, walking across the floor and walking through me and coming out the other side. And we caught that on the FLIR camera. So we caught some really amazing things, and I discerned a lot of really amazing things. And unfortunately, it never went to air, which I found out is pretty common in the TV and movie industry.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, very frustrating, but
Yep.
it was a really exciting time, really great time.
Yep, you're right about that. I'll tell my little sad story real quick. I had Stacy Brown. He's lives in this area, and he's been on Finding Bigfoot, and he's in the Bigfoot. And him and his dad got a thermal shot of Bigfoot like that. It's pretty good, and they won some contest and got research money off Spike TV or something. But he came to my house to film me for some Bigfoot stuff, and said I did a really great job. And the night before, I was nervous. The whole time, I felt like I was going to crawl out of my skin. Just a camera camera on you, freaking me out. Never done it before.
Right.
And anyway, they get back and something was wrong with the microphone and they didn't get any of my audio. It was on their side.
No.
One little tear went down my cheek, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. I didn't really want to do it anyway. I was nervous. I don't really care for TV. I mean, I watch it and stuff, but I don't really want to be on it.
Yeah, this really hurt.
Camera now.
Yeah, this really hurt when I didn't go to series because I had signed a 5-year contract.
Oh.
And I was like, oh man, but c'est la vie. So.
Oh yeah, I know.
It happens. This happens for sure. What was the Uri Geller situation? How did that come about?
That's really funny. When I was growing up, I grew up in a small West Texas town, and my family was very poor. And I grew up reading about Uri. I read his book, My Story, and saw him on TV and those types of things, and would read about him in the tabloids and the magazines. And he was beginning to get success and fame and fortune even then. And I thought, how great this is that somebody that does what I do is actually making a living from it and actually, becoming financially well off from it. I was more power to him. And I had always believed that he was the real deal, in spite of all the detractors, and including the amazing Randy, who made it his life's work to destroy Uri. So when I had moved to New York, for some reason, I don't even remember now. I literally don't remember. I began emailing with Uri, and we exchanged several emails and some snail mails, and we just discussed very specific spiritual and paranormal topics and things. And this went on for quite some time. And so one day, and I didn't have any photographs of myself on my website at the time. I don't think there was any photographs of me anywhere on the internet. So if Uri walked by me on the street, he wouldn't have known me unless psychically, right? So one day I became aware that Uri was giving a demonstration in Manhattan, and my wife got home from work. I work out of the house, obviously, wherever I am. And my wife got home. I said, Uri's giving a demonstration. We have to go see. She was like, oh, yeah. So we got the tickets to go, and the tickets were anonymous. Didn't have my name on the tickets or anything. So there was no way he would have known that I would have been there. And she kept asking me, she said, I know you think he is, but do you really think he's really completely legitimate? And I said, yeah, but I said, I'll tell you what, when we get there, if I can get in close enough proximity just to touch him, just to brush his arm or to pat him on the back or whatever, my gift will give me everything I need, and I'll know beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I said, I'm convinced he is the real deal. So we get there to the demonstration, and I had to go to the restroom. We're sitting there waiting, and I said, I go to the restroom. I'll be right back. So I get up and go to the restroom, and lo and behold, who comes out the restroom door while I'm walking in? There's Uri, and we smiled at each other and nodded, and I reached over and just kind of patted him on the back in a friendly way and immediately got everything I needed. But yes, indeed, he was the real deal. So we watched his demonstrations and his lecture, which was really amazing, really stunning. And at the end, he was autographing books. So I had a book I wanted him to autograph, and we were standing in line. So my turn came, and I got up there, and I smiled and nodded at him. He smiled and nodded at me like, oh, the guy from the restroom. Yeah, how you doing? And so he opens up the book and starts to write, and he stops, and he looks back up at me, and he goes, wait a minute. We know each other. And I kind of smiled and kind of laughed a little bit and said, yeah. And he said, we've never met, but we know each other. And I said, yeah. And he said, we've emailed back and forth and even done some snail mail about some very specific psychic and spiritual things that we've discussed. Not just once or twice, but a lot over a long period of time. And I said, yep, that's exactly right. And then I told him who I was. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah. And everybody standing around hearing this was like, holy cow, just blew their mind. So that's how I met Uri, and we stayed friends and communicated for a while. And as I moved over the years, you lose addresses, you lose contact with people, this and the other. And so when I was writing, after I wrote my first book, Writing with Ghost Angels and the Spirits of the Dead, I was like wanting to get endorsements for it, as all authors strive to do. And I was like, who do I know? And it was like, well, Uri, nitwit. And I was like, God, I've lost his email, and I don't even know if he'll remember me after all this time. So I sent it to his general email on his website, and just, explained who I was and reminded him of the experience at the demonstration he gave, and asked him if he would possibly give me an endorsement for the book. And he remembered me and wrote back within a few hours' time and gave me an endorsement for the book. So I thought that was really awesome. That was really great.
Cool.
So that's how I came to know Uri.
Cool. That's definitely. Which book was it the endorsement for? Your
Well, he
first
actually gave me one for both. He
Wow.
gave me one for the second book as well. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the Halloween season, is there any other stories that you can think of that you'd like to share?
Oh gosh.
No, you have a Salem one. Is that possibly you have something about Salem? That may
Yeah, we had we went
whatever
to
you-
Salem, and we went on this ghost walk, this ghost tour, and it was by the cemetery, and the cemetery had like an open wire fence there that you could see through. It was just a wire fence that just kind of keep people out, keep from walking in. So it was dark, and it was warm that night, and we got to the cemetery as part of the ghost walk, and there's an abandoned jail there, or was. It's been converted into something else now, unfortunately, but there was an abandoned jail there by the cemetery. And so as we got there, the tour guide told us, he said, okay, look, everybody, please be quiet as we walk down the street. Not out of respect for the cemetery and the dead, but because there's people living in houses across the street. And in the past, we've had complaints come to the ghost tour owners and operators and everything about the excess noise when people are walking down and laughing and making jokes or yelling or talking too loudly or whatever. So please, if you have to say something, whisper. And when we get down to the end of the block and turn the corner, get away from the houses, then we can all speak in normal tone. But while we're walking toward the end of the block, walking by the cemetery, let's all keep it quiet. If you say anything, whisper. So about a third of the group was, yes, ghost, I'm gung ho. A third of the group was like, no, we'll see. And a third of the group was like, yeah, right, ghost, no way. So we all start walking, and the first thing that happens is, now it's a warm evening, the first thing that happens is we hit this blast of cold air, and it stays cold for the rest of the way around. And I mean, it's this noticeable drop in temperature. And even the skeptics behind us, we can hear them whispering, how did you feel how cold it just got? It just got freezing all of a sudden. What's happening? So we're walking along, and then from out in the cemetery, you can see these lights moving around, like somebody has a flashlight moving around out there. But it's lit up well enough from the street lights, and I think there may have been a moon out, that you could tell there was no one out there with a flashlight or anything, because you could see all the way out into the cemetery virtually. And so these lights and orbs are moving around out there. And then from right by us, right by the fence, which you can see through, there's nobody there, and there's plenty of light to see off into the cemetery, comes this gibbering noise, real loud. And my wife turned to me and said, don't do that, you're going to scare people. And I said, it wasn't me. And so some ghost or spirit or whatever from in the cemetery had done that. And of course, that made people jump and kind of get goosey. And then in the abandoned jail, people saw lights going on and off in the jail, which was well known to happen at the time. So by the time we reached the end of the corner and made the turn up towards the jail, just about everybody in the group had become a believer. So we get to the abandoned jail, and we're standing out there, and the guide's telling us more about the history of it and this, that, and the other. And it's really, really cold. It's really, really chilly right there. And all of a sudden, my wife turns around. I'm standing like 2 or 3 feet behind my wife. And all of a sudden, she turns around. She goes, for God's sake, don't do that in public. I said, why? She said, pinch me on the butt. I said, I didn't touch you. I wasn't here. So a ghost. I'm going to get me something.
By ghost. There you go.
So that was our Salem experience. It was an awesome time. It was an awesome energy, and a lot of good fun there.
Well, I know with my experiences, it seemed like my dad passing was a big catalyst to a lot of my experiences. I think a lot of it was him trying to get in touch. And I know you had a similar situation when your dad passed, and I know you talk about it in the book too, correct? My dad, as soon as he crossed over, he gave me a sign that same night. I heard him physically make a noise that night.
but I hadn't moved back home by then. I was still married, and my wife and I divorced, and my sister divorced, and we moved back home ostensibly to take care of my mom, who was rapidly failing. Eventually became bedfast, and we took care of her while we lived there. But when I moved back home, I took over my dad's old bedroom, and I was a clean freak. I like everything really clean, spick and span, and I always have to have some kind of aroma going, like a candle or incense or something like that. And there was no aroma left of anything of my dad being in that room. And one thing I have to say is, and I was surprised because he was this heavy mentholatum user. He would take every single night of his life, he would take mentholatum and he would rub it on his nose, and then he would close his eyelids and rub a smear of mentholatum on his eyelids. And then he would rub some on his lips, and then he would take a little tiny bit of it and stick it in his mouth and swallow it.
Oh my God!
How he kept from dying, I don't know. And I have talked to a few
That's
other
pretty
people.
weird.
Yeah, and I have talked to a few other people whose family members did that. So, anyways, the smell of mentholatum would permeate the house, obviously. So after I had lived there for a while, again with no residual aromas or anything there, all of a sudden, like right under my nose, I would get this big hit, this big smell of mentholatum, and I'd be like, "Oh, hey, Dad, how are you? Thank you for coming to visit me." And it would vanish. And if I moved away from the spot where it was at, you couldn't smell it anywhere else, just in that one spot. So that happened for a long time, but that's how I always knew that my dad was there. But he would bring that mentholatum aroma to me, and sometimes it would be so strong you could smell it throughout the rest of the house. And I remember my mother asking me one time. She goes, "Are you sick? Are you rubbing yourself down with Vicks or mentholatum or something?" She said, "I can smell it all the way in here." I said, "No, just Dad coming to visit." So yeah, he gave me that sign for a long time.
I've had stuff with my dad happen like that. Like he always worked on cars. There's like this oily, weird smell. I've smelt that out of nowhere and stuff like that. He also did weird stuff. Like he'd make this weird, I don't know what the hell he was doing. This weird, like kind of spitting with his mouth that was like all the time. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like it's just weird, like weird stuff. Very intense, though, for sure. They just so.
Right.
Like a habit. It's like addicted to that weird. It's like what, and he wasn't chewing dip or anything. It was just weird. Know what the hell was going on there? But well, have you ever had anything dark come up in your experiences? And let's say you did. Is there a way you protect yourself from it? What do you do in a situation like that?
I never have. And all the investigations I've done and all the experiences I've had, they've been overwhelmingly positive and many times life-saving, quite literally. And I've never experienced anything. That's not to say that there isn't darkness or evil. I mean, you read the newspaper every day, you read the news every day, and you see that there's plenty of evil here on the earth. But I haven't found a demon behind every bush, and I haven't found the stereotypical, exorcist movie thing and all this type of thing. Most of the time that I've investigated anything where there was any kind of claims of darkness or malevolence or demonic activity, I've discovered that people were either had mild mental illness, there was drug abuse or drug use involved, or overactive imaginations or misinterpretation of events, whether they were natural events or spiritual events. So I haven't experienced anything like that. I've never experienced anything that frightened me or made me afraid. I've connected with some residual experiences that were left behind by people that did dark things. And of course that feels, very disconcerting, very creepy to experience. But no, I've never experienced anything that I would call anything of darkness or that I had to worry about or felt in fear of or anything like that.
Well, that's good. Most of mine have been pretty positive, except for some things at this house I've wondered about. But it's just kind of how you view it, really. As far as most of mine have been positive, except for the fear factor, and a lot of that was with UFO stuff. Like when you see stuff like that over your house, and there was an instance where I saw some flashing lights in the windows, and it seemed like it may have been something alien, like it had some kind of visor on that flashed, and it was very weird, like they were in the windows. And I remember some stuff like that and have some PTSD, but they never really hurt me besides, being scared crapless. I know I've interviewed Travis Walton before, and he said if you take away the fear, they'd be a walk in the park pretty much. So it's your own fear that kind of sabotages, I guess, in its own way and everything.
Exactly.
One of my weirdest experiences, there's quite a few, but there was in Georgia, me and a friend Brian saw these 3 cloaked beings in the woods that were very small, and they were standing near a black box, and you couldn't see their faces, and they were it was very strange, and it was not anyone playing a joke. It was something, I remember reading a lot of Celtic and kind of other world kind of stuff during that time. Maybe I attracted it, but I had a cat jump towards them and they vanished, and we both were like, did you see that? Yeah, did you see that? And that was one of my weirder ones, and I always trip out trying to figure out what that little black box was. Like, who knows? Really. You can get paranoid with that for sure, thinking about whatever, some kind of brainwashing device. The Hellraiser box. What is that?
Really?
The Hellraiser box. Yep.
And those little phantasm dwarfs give me the creeps anytime I see Phantasm, those little freaking things in there. And so there's been some stuff like that. One of the weirder ones in Florida and Lynn Haven, I know I've told this a bunch, but I'll tell it to you since you're in Florida. I was walking down the road in Lynn Haven, and this big orange, weird, rusty ball floated over the street. And the weirdest thing about it, there was no chains connected to it. There wasn't anything carrying it. It was just a big, weird, orange, rusty ball with nothing carrying it. Yeah. And it just went across the sky. It's like, is that Oscar the Grouch's UFO? I don't know what it was, but that's one that haunts me. And then with a lot of that stuff, you wonder if maybe they did take me. I don't think they did, but then you see them that close, you're like, well, maybe they did, and you just don't remember. I still don't know, but there's been some weird ones for sure. Has Bigfoot ever come up in any of your kind of situations?
No, and I wish that they would. I would love to have that face-to-face contact. I would love to have that physical contact. But so far, not yet. But I'm hoping that occurs.
Seems like they try to show themselves mostly to dudes that would shoot them. I don't understand that. like Dick Cheney source. They don't do it with everyone, I'm sure. But some of these people on the shows, I'm like, these guys will probably shoot you if they could. Though it probably wouldn't have much of an effect, because I think they do have some metaphysical properties and things like that.
I do think there's a big, strong paranormal element to Bigfoot. Yeah.
Me too.
Well, the Native Americans, have always said that there was this spiritual, this paranormal component to Bigfoot.
It's definitely fascinating.
Absolutely.
For sure. And Wham's up in Hudson Valley, and it talks to a lot of natives up there, and there's a lot of experiences that happen up there for sure. And
our old stomping grounds. We were up in Cornwall. Yeah,
Cornwall, yeah. Yep. Yeah, they have stuff happening here all the time, and in fact, I'm still. I mean, I wrote about this case in my book, but it's a case. It's a place where I go myself. Like it's to a gym. It's haunted, and I go in there and talk to my trainer like twice a week, and they're still having stuff happen. It's happening constantly. I mean, just constantly. So
definitely, I remember you talking about that. Did they ever say they never found out any history of that place or anything?
Oh yeah, they think that they're pretty sure that the main ghost or the main manifestation. There are a number of different manifestations, but they're pretty sure that the main manifestation is probably the original owner of the building. And that's because the way in which he manifests is kind of mischievous. So it's sort of like the way that he was, according to his granddaughter, who now lives in the building herself, and now her family owns the building. That it seems to, the behavior seems to be a lot like
to fit his personality.
His personality, and there are lots of different things that happen. There are weird sounds that happen. There's poltergeist activity that happens. I mean, some of the best CCTV footage I've ever seen. Actually, I'm trying to get him to put it on. I keep saying, I'm going to bug you to put it on a flash drive or send it to me, because I actually have a friend who works who does this for a living, and he could clean up the footage, so that it would be clearer.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But in fact, one thing happened, one of the most recent things happened just like a month or two ago. I mean, some really great footage. Scared him so much, unnerved him, that he turned off one of the CCTV cameras because he just didn't want to see it anymore. Because they're all keyed to his phone, so that when they have motion detector stuff goes off, it pings his phone.
Right.
So he can look at it, and so but this was like pinging him like all the time, and it was driving. So he finally I mean, he can turn it back on. It's still there, but he just put it off for a little while. But no, and I've had a couple of experiences there. I mean, none of mine have been quite as dramatic, but I heard some voices that came out of a speaker that was unplugged and detached from anything that would have been able to generate a sound.
Right.
And these two voices came out and talked to me once when I was upstairs in the upstairs workout room by myself. And it is kind of funny when that happens. I mean, people have different reactions, but my reaction that morning was, because it was so unnerving, because I had sat down and I was getting ready to do my workout with one of my trainers, and I was waiting for him to come. It was like 7 a.m. And I thought to myself, I wonder if anything has happened up here lately. But I didn't say it. I just thought it. It just was like a thought that floated through my head. And as soon as it floated through my head, these two voices came out of the speaker. And one was a female voice, and I didn't really understand what it said. It was sort of in the background. But there was a male voice, and that came out, and it said something to the effect of, it sounded like it said, "We're here."
There you go.
It wasn't like real loud either. Yeah. It was just sort of like, but it was like really close to me. It was like less than like 5 feet from me. And I thought to myself, I just had a reaction. I just said, okay. And I stood up and I went downstairs. It was like, I didn't want it to start talking to me. It just was like, this is too early.
We're here. Here's Johnny.
I had to get coffee to have a conversation with you out of the speaker.
Well, we got about 3 minutes. John, do you have a website that you'd like to plug, or?
Yeah, if anybody wants to get a reading with me, they can go to johnrussell.net, and I always accept new clients. And for more information on the books, you can go to knockintheattic.net or writingwithghosts.net. And there's links there to buy the books. They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target and Walmart carry them online. So they're available everywhere. But that'll give you a chance to learn more about the books, more about me. The first chapter of each book is available to read for free on each respective website. So you get a little idea of what it's about and so on and so forth. So that's where you can find all the information.
And definitely keep us in the loop on your third book. Have you? I know you probably don't want to talk about a third book yet. I know you're working on one, but let us know for sure, and we'll get you back on. And
I'm working on that, and hopefully it'll be out around March of next year. I hope, but I've been so snowed with podcasts and clients and everything that it's hard making time to write. So I'm taking November and December off from podcasts, not from clients, but from podcasts, and hopefully that'll free up a little time, and I can catch up on that third book a little bit.
Cool. I'll definitely have to email you sometime. We got this Florida situation here, so I have to keep in touch with you. You don't come across many Floridians. There's a few, but I know Albert Rosellas, he's got some UFO stuff. There's a few, but there's not many that I know of. We're here, though. We're down here in this weird Florida.
In the weird Florida. Absolutely.
Florida's just plain weird. I'm sorry. Florida.
Yeah. It definitely is. It's shaped. I say it's shaped like a Sasquatch phallus too. So it's like
Yep, there you go.
a strange shape for sure.
Yep.
Just hanging down there.
That guy, a friend of mine, Eric Grimsmund, that's come on about Nostradamus and stuff on the show. He was hanging out here. It's like, you want to go get a beer? I was like, well, let me see how far that is. It's like 5 hours away. Like, that's the big thing about Florida. Like, you meet someone, you'll hang out 10 hours away. It's so like a million years just to get to them. Like, it's so far away.
But not as bad as Texas.
Yeah.
If you drive all the way across Texas from tip to tip, it'll take you a couple of days. So
Texas is big for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely been a pleasure and so good to meet you. And I'll definitely stay in touch and get you on when your other book comes out. And thank you so much, John. We've enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you guys. It's been great to be here. Enjoyed it a lot, and wish y'all all the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Right.
And everybody, check out writersofthefuture.com. That's writers and illustrators of the future, writersofthefuture.com. We'll see you next week with Nathaniel Gillis. And hope you're enjoying the Halloween lineup. We had a guy, I don't remember, I think I mentioned it, but last week was Anthony Lamont with his hearse he sells ice cream out of, and he has a coffin freezer in the back, and he goes to conventions and frozensniffs.com. That's a trip. But that's been trying to get a good Halloween lineup. So great to have you a part of that, John. And we'll be in touch. Thanks, Wham. Thanks, JoJo. Writersofthefuture.com. Writersofthefuture.com. He's like 4 or 5 times. So I'm trying to, like, come on, man. All right, everybody have a good weekend. I got to watch What We Do in the Shadows. And one year, maybe Wham will watch that if she can get to it. You need to see It's like a funny.
What is it called?
What We Do in the Shadows.
What's it on?
It's on Hulu. It's on Hulu. It's a funny vampire comedy show where they all live together in a house, and it's like, I would compare it to Monsters or Addams Family, but more extreme. But it's funny, and you'd laugh a lot. It's really good. There's a movie too.
I will check it out.
There's a movie too that's really good, and it's called What We Do in the Shadows. It kind of spawned the series. Mark Hamill was in it as Bill the Vampire, Luke Skywalker. So it's good. But yeah, check it. Perfect for Halloween. All right, everybody. We'll see you next Friday. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
All right, good stuff.
Thanks. I better end this thing now. We just started using StreamYard. I like it a lot, but it's like there's always some new crap I have to learn. So I'm doing it.
Well, listen, I appreciate it so much, Jeffrey, and you have a good night, and we'll talk again.
Definitely. Take care, John. Thanks.
All right. Take care.